A few months ago, before the latest Sydney pandemic outbreak with Delta, thankfully we're just about through that now, learning to live with COVID versus trying to get rid of it. But my brother got chickens, two chickens, actually two more chickens because the previous two got eaten by a fox, which I never knew we had foxes in the area that we live in, but suffice to say, if you want to find foxes in your neighborhood, get chickens. So two new chickens to replace the two recently eaten chickens, and they started hatching eventually, which initially was great. Now it's just like it's lost its novelty. But recently one of them began to brood. Now, if you don't know anything about chickens, and I certainly don't expect you to, when a chicken broods, so obviously it's a female, it's laying. When a chicken broods, that means rather than laying its egg and then happily going about life, it sits on the egg trying to hatch it. Now, the problem with that is it then stops laying, and sometimes it doesn't even eat. For example, when my mum went down to feed the chickens today, we have two. The one that isn't brooding ran down happily to eat. The other one, which normally would also run down excited to eat, just stayed in the hutch sitting on its egg. So sometimes they can become quite disheveled and they can look quite unhealthy because they just sit on the egg trying to hatch it all the time. Not that it's going to hatch, obviously, because we don't have a cock, pardon the language, but we don't have a male chicken, so it's not actually going to hatch, but it doesn't know any better. Now, my parents want to stop the brooding behavior because it will stop laying and it could become quite unhealthy. And I believe there are some potential behavioral challenges as well. Now, when you want to stop a chicken from brooding, there's a couple of things you can do. One is to literally separate it from where it's brooding so it can't get there. There's another one which my parents have looked up, which apparently is to dunk it in cold water. And the reason you basically give it an ice bath up to its neck, so you don't dip its head in the water. But the reason the ice bath apparently is supposed to work is because it lowers the temperature. And we did notice that the brooding chicken, it's very, very red at the moment because it's so hot. There's so much blood flowing through it. And the reason, I believe anyway, I could be slightly wrong on this, but the reason that they start brooding, it's not that they make a decision. Obviously, a chicken doesn't make a conscious decision one day and go, you know what I'm going to do with my life? I'm going to try and hatch a chicken because at my stage of life, that's what I should be trying to do. No. A chicken has, much like humans, certain hormones in its body. When the hormones kick in, it produces certain types of behavior. Now, the reason that the ice bath is supposed to work is because it counteracts some of those hormonal changes. It doesn't counteract the behavior directly, and this is the message that I want to get through to you today in case you're wondering, Adrian, why are you talking to me about chickens? It's because a lot of you are like the brooding chicken. You have behaviors that you do again and again and again that you really wish you wouldn't do. Like maybe you drink too much coffee, guilty as charged, or you eat a certain unhealthy food, or you keep staying up late and not waking up early. Or there could be behaviors that you wish you would do that you're not doing, like getting to the gym more often, or waking up early, or just getting yourself to follow through and stop procrastinating. The issue for a lot of you is going to be, and myself included in this, is that we try to change the behavior directly. Now, that's like trying to get the chicken to stop brooding without taking into consideration, well, what caused that brooding behavior in the first place? And if you just try to keep changing the behavior without treating the cause, then you're doomed to failure. For example, no matter how much we, let's say, separate the chicken temporarily from where it broods, as soon as it goes back, in fact, we have this patch out on the front garden, and the chickens are normally kept in the back garden in their hutch. But we have this patch in the front garden that's surrounded by fairly high bushes, and the chickens have been in there happily. We can leave them. They don't try and jump over the bush to escape until recently when the chicken started brooding, and it was so desperate to get back to its nest that it jumped the bush and tried running back. if you try and change the behavior without addressing the cause, then it's doomed to failure. And you go, again, Adrian, well, what's your point here? Are you saying that I need to have an ice bath? Well, potentially. But my point for you humans watching is that the cause of your behaviors, in the long term, it could be behavior, it could be your beliefs, it could be your identity. But in the moment, and the fastest way to get yourself to change a behavior is your physiology. Now that's a fancy word for saying the way you use your physical body. And if you change your physiology, you change your behavior. Because you change your physiology, you immediately change your state, you change your mood, you change your emotional state, and then that engenders the behaviors that you want or don't want. So much like when you take the chicken and dunk it in the ice cold water, I don't actually know if they've done that yet, but that has a radical change in your physiology. It causes a radical change in the chicken's physiology. In fact, if any of you have had an ice bath or a cold shower, you know exactly what it's like. I have found that coffee recently has not been that good at waking me up, which is one of the reasons I'm detoxing on it a bit. But a cold shower, I tell you what, if you don't feel like taking massive action in the morning and you turn the faucet or the tap on full bore cold water, you're going to wake up. I don't care how much sleep you have had or not had, or how much coffee you've not had, or tea, whatever it is, you're going to wake up. And the key to this is because you create that massive change in your physiology, that changes your emotional state, and then that's going to create the behaviors that you want or don't want. So the secret here, much like my parents are going to try to stop the brooding behavior by changing the chicken's physiology by dunking in cold water, if you have, let's say, a behavior that you don't like, let's say you procrastinate an awful lot, you can try changing that behavior again and again and again and again. And I know many of you would have tried this, changing this particular behavior, procrastination. But have you ever tried doing it, and maybe you're trying to do it, stop procrastinating for the 1 billionth time, banging your head against that brick wall, and you've just gone, you know what, just doesn't work. And the danger at that point is, rather than going, well, the reason it hasn't worked is because I haven't been doing it right, rather than doing that, you start just thinking, oh, it's just the way I am, I'm a procrastinator. And now, because if you say that enough, that becomes a belief. It becomes part of your identity. Now it's going to be a lot harder to change it because you identify as a procrastinator. Not someone who procrastinates, but you identify yourself as a procrastinator. It's a lot harder to change. So if you want to stop procrastinating, rather than trying to think about it or just stop it, because if you notice you stop one behavior, you start another one. Like if you have ever seen people who try to stop smoking, they stop the smoking, but they start eating. So that's not great. We don't just want to replace one negative behavior with another negative behavior. Rather than trying to stop the procrastinating behavior, change your physiology. Go for a run. Go for an intense workout. Go and have a cold shower. Any of those sorts of things. And you will find that you feel a lot less willing to procrastinate when you've got blood flowing through you, when you are feeling fresh, when you're feeling energized, when you're feeling empowered. Maybe you get around some people who help lift your physiology. We all know those people who, when we're around them, our emotional, our mood lifts, right? Those people who give us energy. And then at the same time, we also know people around us who just suck the energy out of any room they're in. So anything you can do to shift your physiology, to shift your state, to make the behaviors you want automatic, that's the key. So much like the brooding chicken, don't go and try to change the behavior directly. Instead, look at what's causing that behavior. And it's almost always a state, an emotional state that you're in. Maybe you're tired, maybe you're exhausted, maybe you're stressed, frustrated. And the easiest way to change that emotional state, because you go, well, Adrian, what am I going to do? I just wake up every day, I'm exhausted. What are you saying? What can I do? The easiest way to change your state is by changing your physiology. For example, if you wake up and you're super tired, But as I said, you dunk yourself in an ice bath, or you've seen those people who cut holes in the ice and dunk themselves in cold water. That creates a massive change in your physiology, and that by far is the biggest key to shifting your state straight away. I promise you, you're not going to procrastinate. Let's say you say, oh, I'm a procrastinator. All right, let's say I throw you in the ice water. I highly doubt after that massive change in your physiology, you're going to procrastinate getting out of that icy water, are you? Because different physiology creates different state, creates different actions. So here's my challenge to you. Identify a behavior that you don't want to do anymore. Could be procrastination. Or identify a behavior that you want to do more. Taking action, waking up early, whatever it is. And I want you to work out how you can use your physiology to create the emotional state where that action is guaranteed to happen or is guaranteed to not happen. So rather than, I hope that makes sense. So rather than going after the state itself, the behavior itself, much like the chicken, I want you, rather than trying to stop brooding, have the ice bath. Or rather than trying to stop brooding, cut yourself off from even the possibility of doing it, but then you have to replace it with a more empowering behavior as well. So for example, if you want to stop eating chocolate, don't have any chocolate in the house. But then what happens is people either order Uber Eats or they start eating the chips in their house or something else. So you have to create empowering alternatives. So not going, oh, I'm never going to want chocolate, because we're human. Next time you crave that chocolate, could you have a healthier alternative? Maybe there's a healthier food you could eat, or maybe every time you crave chocolate, you go for a walk. And there's one thing, and I'll finish on this. There's one thing I will say. Regular exercise, staying active and eating healthy is the best ongoing way to have a winning physiology, and is the best ongoing way to have an emotional state that supports your success. And I know that some of you are going to say you prefer working out in the morning or in the afternoon or the evening. And there's even some research to suggest that some of us are wired that way, that some of us are more wired to be more active late in the day versus early on in the day. But what I will tell you is this: there's a reason that so many super successful people say they work out first thing in the morning or meditate first thing in the morning, because it sets their day up for success. Because exercising changes your physiology, changes your state, changes the actions that you're going to take. And I think you can understand this. If you go for a run or an intense workout, you're much more likely to tackle the day in an empowered state. If you're someone who likes to meditate in the morning, by the way, there is no practice of meditation that I've seen that doesn't involve some sort of focus on breathing. And by the way, breathing, inhaling in a deep, full way versus the shallow way that so many of us do because we have horrible posture / physiology, because we're slouched over our computers all the time and we don't breathe. But changing that breathing pattern, what's that for? That's again to change our physiology. That's part of how you're using your physical body, which changes the state that you're in, which then much more likely you're going to have a great day. So if you breathe deeply, you oxygenate. In fact, if you've ever done some really deep breathing exercises, such as the ones I've done, sometimes when you inhale really deeply, you can actually get a bit dizzy because your brain's like filling up with oxygen all of a sudden, and it's going, wow, we're not used to having so much oxygen, because you're used to sort of shallow breathing all the time. So, moral of the story, don't be a brooding chicken. Okay, well, if you are a brooding chicken, I mean, look, to be serious, moral of the story, we're all going to be that brooding chicken at one time or another. And that means there's going to be behaviors that you do that you don't want to do, that you want to stop yourself from doing. But the key to stopping yourself from being the brooding chicken is to not focus on the behavior itself, but to focus on what has caused that behavior. And that is taking care of your emotional state. So when you're in a certain state, that's going to cause certain behaviors for you to happen. Just like with the chicken and the hormones, it causes the brooding. It's not a conscious decision. Right? So if you are in a crappy, tired, frustrated, angry state all the time, of course you're going to be doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing. But exactly like the chicken, you can't help it. But what you can do that the chicken can't do is become self-aware, change your state by radically changing your physiology. And as I said, the easiest way to do that, start breathing, go for a run, go for an intense workout, eat more healthily, don't have heavily processed foods because that spikes your sugar, your blood sugar, and then it causes a massive drop. And then your physiology is, oh, I've got brain fog, you can't do anything. So then you have another sugar, then you have another coffee, and you're just going to, that's not how you create an amazing life. I think you know that. You don't need me to tell you that. Let me leave it there. Don't be the brooding chicken, and I will keep you updated as to what actually happens with the chicken. We'll see. But remember, like, if you have a behavior that you don't like, just remember, you don't always do that behavior. We procrastinate sometimes, but I'm sure there have been times, you tell me, where you've really followed through to a level that you never thought was possible. You might go, I'm never as confident as I would like. But I bet you at least once in your life, there's been a time where you've been supremely confident, or you haven't even cared what anyone else thought because something just needed to be done. So we are not our behaviors. In certain situations, we can be one way, and then in certain situations, we can be completely different. We all know people who are generally kind and happy, and sometimes they snap. Well, we don't go, that person's angry. We just go, oh, that person's just having a bad day. And then we know that there are people who are always angry, always frustrated, always looking for something. And then when they treat you nicely, you're kind of going, what's wrong with you? Like, what do you want from me? So you're not your behaviors. And that should be the clue. Okay? So you are able to stop any behavior you want, but you have to do it by addressing the cause, not the effect. Have a great day, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.